Maya pressed her face against the cold metal of the observation deck, watching the stars streak past in brilliant lines of light. The colony ship Harmony had been her home for all 16 years of her life, carrying 20,000 humans toward the distant world of 442b. She had never seen a real planet, never breathed unfiltered air, never felt grass beneath her feet. But that was about to change. All passengers report to designated stations. We will begin orbital insertion in 6 hours, the captain's voice echoed through the corridors. Maya's heart raced. After 3 generations of travel, they were finally here. She hurried through the ship's winding passages, past the hydroponic gardens and the humming life support systems, toward the xenobiology lab where her grandmother worked. Doctor was hunched over a holographic display, her silver hair tied back in its usual messy bun. Strange symbols floated in the air before her, shifting and changing in patterns that hurt Maya's eyes to follow. "Grandma, what is that?" Maya asked, stepping closer. Jumped, quickly shutting down the display. "Maya, you shouldn't sneak up on an old woman like that." But her smile was strained, and Maya noticed her hands were shaking. "I wasn't sneaking. The captain just announced orbital insertion. Aren't you excited? We're finally going to see our new world." "Yes, excited," repeated, but she looked more worried than excited. "Maya, I need you to promise me something. When we land, stay close to the main settlement. Don't wander off exploring, no matter how curious you get." Maya frowned. Her grandmother knew her too well. "Why? What's down there that has you so scared?" "I'm not scared," said quickly. "I'm just being careful, promise me." "I promise," Maya lied easily. She had no intention of staying cooped up in some sterile settlement when there was an entire alien world to explore. 6 hours later, Maya stood in the landing bay with hundreds of other colonists, watching the massive bay doors slowly open. The air that rushed in was warm and sweet, carrying scents she had never experienced, growing things, Earth, something wild and alive that made her lungs expand with joy. The planet spread out before them like a dream made real. Rolling hills covered in purple and silver vegetation stretched to the horizon. Strange trees with crystalline leaves chimed softly in the alien breeze. In the distance, massive mountains pierced the sky, their peaks wreathed in clouds that sparkled with an inner light. "It's beautiful," someone whispered behind her. Maya agreed, but she also noticed something else. As the other colonists pointed and gasped at the alien landscape, she saw shapes moving in the distant hills. Large shapes, too big to be the small herbivores their scouts had reported. And when the wind shifted, she caught a scent that made her skin prickle with instinctive alarm. The settlement construction began immediately. The humans were efficient, having planned this moment for decades. Within days, prefabricated buildings rose from the purple soil, creating a small but functional town. Maya helped where she could, but her eyes kept drifting to the unexplored lands beyond their growing border. On the 5th day, while helping to install atmospheric processors, she overheard a conversation between Captain and her grandmother. "The energy readings are getting stronger," was saying. "Whatever's out there, it's aware of us now." "Could it be hostile?" the captain asked. "I don't know, but the patterns suggest intelligence, high intelligence, and the power signatures," shook her head. "I've never seen anything like them." "Should we establish a wider perimeter, post guards?" "Guards won't help against this. Just keep everyone close to the settlement. And Captain, if anything happens to me, make sure Maya gets access to my research files. The password is Dragon's Heart." Maya's blood ran cold. Dragon's Heart had been her favorite bedtime story when she was little. Her grandmother used to tell her tales of brave knights and mighty dragons, of secrets hidden in caves of crystal and gold. But why would she use that as a password for her research? That night, while the settlement slept, Maya crept out of her family's temporary shelter. She had to know what was out there, what had her grandmother so frightened. The alien moons cast everything in a silvery light, and the crystalline trees sang their strange songs in the wind. She followed a path through the purple grass, heading toward the distant mountains where the energy readings had been strongest. The night was alive with sounds, chirping insects, the rustle of small creatures in the undergrowth, the distant call of something large and wild. After an hour of walking, she reached the base of the foothills. Here, the vegetation grew thicker and stranger. Vines covered in glowing pods twisted around rock formations that looked almost deliberately shaped. The air hummed with energy that made her teeth ache. Then she saw the cave. It was larger than any natural cave should be, carved into the mountainside with smooth, deliberate curves. Light pulsed from within, a warm, golden glow that seemed to beckon her forward. Every instinct told her to turn back, to run to the safety of the settlement. Instead, she stepped inside. The cave walls were covered in the same strange symbols she had seen in her grandmother's lab, but here they glowed with their own light, shifting and changing in hypnotic patterns. The air was warm and dry, tinged with a scent like cinnamon and lightning. As she went deeper, the cave widened into a vast chamber, and there in the center she saw something that made her gasp and stumble backward. It was a dragon. Not the mythical creatures from her grandmother's stories, but something far more magnificent and terrifying. Its scales were like liquid metal, shifting from gold to silver to bronze in the pulsing light. It was easily the size of a building, coiled in the chamber like a living mountain. Its eyes were closed, and for a moment Maya thought it might be dead or sleeping. Then one massive eye opened and looked directly at her. Maya wanted to run, wanted to scream, but found she couldn't move. The dragon's gaze held her frozen, ancient intelligence burning behind eyes the color of molten gold. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through the air but directly in her mind. So, the little star wanderers have finally arrived. You can talk, Maya whispered, finding her voice at last. I have been talking for 3 million years, child. You are simply the first to listen. The dragon shifted slightly, and Maya felt the ground vibrate beneath her feet. Your kind announces itself with metal and fire just as the prophecies foretold. Prophecies? The dragon's massive head tilted, studying her with an intensity that made her feel naked and small. You do not know. Of course you do not. How could you? Your grandmother was wise to hide the truth. My grandmother, you know her. Yes, I know her well. She has been corresponding with me for many years, ever since your ship first appeared in our sensor nets 23 cycles ago. Maya's mind reeled. 23 years ago, her grandmother had been the ship's chief, in charge of studying any alien life they might encounter. But there had never been any reports of intelligent life on this planet. She's been talking to you all this time. Through the quantum relay your scientists built to study our technology, they thought they were merely observing energy patterns, realized the truth, that the patterns were language, complex communication between myself and others of my kind. Others, there are more of you. The dragon's expression, somehow Maya could read expressions on that alien face, grew sad. Once there were many. Now only a few remain, scattered across the galaxy, guardians of worlds and watchers of the void. I am last of the Golden Flight, keeper of this world's secrets. What secrets? Instead of answering, rose to his full height. The chamber filled with golden light as his scales began to glow. Ancient symbols appeared on the walls, spinning and dancing in complex patterns. This world was not chosen for your new home by accident, young Maya. It was prepared for you, shaped over to be suitable for human life. The atmospheric composition, the orbital mechanics, the magnetic field, all carefully adjusted to welcome your species when you were ready to leave your birth world. That's impossible. The surveys showed this was a natural Class M planet. Your surveys showed what we wanted them to show. We have been watching your kind since you first looked up at the stars with wonder in your eyes. Humanity has a gift, child, a spark that few species possess. You see beauty in the universe, you create art and music and stories that touch the very fabric of reality. You love fiercely, fight bravely, and never surrender hope even in the darkest times. Maya thought of the 3-generation journey her people had made, the sacrifices and determination it had taken to reach this world. But why? Why help us? Because darkness is coming, an ancient enemy that devours worlds and extinguishes the light of civilizations. They have already consumed a dozen star systems in the outer rim. Soon they will reach the core worlds. When that time comes, the universe will need heroes, and your species, eyes blazed with fierce pride. Your species has the potential to be the greatest heroes the galaxy has ever known. You're talking about war. I am talking about survival, not just for humanity, but for every thinking being in the galaxy. The Devourers show no mercy except no surrender. They are extinction itself given form and purpose. Maya felt overwhelmed. She had come looking for adventure and discovered the fate of the galaxy might rest on her people's shoulders. What do you want from me? Your grandmother has been my contact for years, but she grows old and will not live to see the coming storm. I need someone young, someone brave enough to bridge the gap between our species, someone who can help prepare humanity for what lies ahead. You want me to be your ambassador. I want you to be more than that. I want you to be humanity's guide into a larger universe, the one who helps your people discover their true potential. Lowered his great head until it was level with hers. But first, you must prove yourself worthy of the trust I place in you. How? Return to your settlement. Say nothing of what you have learned tonight. In 3 days, I will test your people's character. How they respond will determine whether they are truly ready for the role destiny has prepared for them. Maya wanted to ask more questions, but was already beginning to fade, his golden light dimming to darkness. Wait, what kind of test? One your kind excels at, came his voice, now distant as an echo. The chance to save someone who needs help. Maya found herself alone in a dark cave, with only the lingering scent of cinnamon and lightning to prove the encounter had been real. She made her way back to the settlement in a daze, her mind spinning with everything she had learned. Her grandmother was waiting for her when she climbed through the window of their shelter. You met him, said. It wasn't a question. You've known all along, about the dragons, about why we're really here. Nodded, her face lined with exhaustion. I've carried that secret for 23 years. The burden of knowing our entire journey was orchestrated, that we were chosen for something far greater and more dangerous than simply finding a new home. Why didn't you tell me? Because you're 16 years old, Maya. You should be worrying about school and friends and maybe your first romance, not the fate of the galaxy. But he chose me to be his new contact. Chooses based on the heart, not the age. He sees something in you that even I haven't recognized yet. Reached out and took her granddaughter's hands. Whatever test he has planned, trust your instincts. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to do the right thing even when it costs us everything. Maya squeezed her grandmother's hands, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. In 3 days, her people would be tested, and somehow, she knew their response would change the course of galactic history. Outside their shelter, the alien moons continued their dance across the star-filled sky, and in the distant mountains, ancient eyes watched and waited to see what humanity was truly made of. The next 2 days passed in a blur of normal settlement activities. Maya helped with construction, attended planning meetings, and tried to act like her world hadn't been turned upside down. But she found herself constantly scanning the horizon, looking for signs of the coming test. On the 3rd day, as the sun set behind the crystalline trees, the test began. A child's scream echoed across the settlement. Tommy, the captain's 7-year-old son, had wandered too close to one of the processed atmospheric vents and fallen into a hidden sinkhole. The hole was narrow but deep, and Tommy was trapped 15 feet down in a space too small for an adult to reach. We need rope, Captain shouted, and someone small enough to go down after him. Maya knew this was it. The test had promised. She also knew that Tommy was probably in no real danger. The dragon had likely arranged this to seem perilous while keeping the child safe. But her people didn't know that. What happened next made Maya's heart swell with pride for her species. Every adult in the settlement dropped what they were doing to help. Engineers brought lights and scanning equipment. The medical team stood ready with emergency supplies. Someone fashioned a harness that would fit a child. And when they realized they needed someone small and brave enough to be lowered into the hole, a dozen teenagers volunteered without hesitation. Maya was chosen because she was the smallest and most agile. As they lowered her into the narrow space, she could hear Tommy crying below. The walls of the sinkhole were smooth stone, and at the bottom she found the little boy scraped but otherwise unhurt. Hey, Tommy, she said softly, trying to keep her voice calm. I'm going to get you out of here, okay? Maya, I was scared you wouldn't come. Of course I came, we all came, that's what families do. As she helped Tommy into the rescue harness, Maya realized that this was exactly what needed to see. Not advanced technology or military might, but simple human decency. The willingness to risk themselves for others, especially the young and vulnerable. When they were both safely back on the surface, Tommy safe in his father's arms, Maya felt a warm presence touch her mind. Well done, Kame's voice heard by her alone. Your people have passed their first test. Now the real work begins. That night, as the settlement celebrated Tommy's rescue, Maya slipped away again to the dragon's cave. This time, she wasn't alone. Her grandmother came with her, along with Captain and the settlement's head engineer, Dr. Sarah. Was waiting for them, his golden scales gleaming in the chamber's eternal light. When he spoke, his mental voice reached all four humans. Welcome, builders of tomorrow. It is time you learned what role humanity will play in the battles to come. The chamber filled with holographic images, star maps showing the advance of something dark and terrible across the galaxy. Worlds going silent, entire systems vanishing into void. The Devourers arrive in waves, explained. First come the Scouts, seeking worlds with high concentrations of intelligent life. Then the Harvesters, who strip away all biological matter. Finally, the World Breakers, who consume the planets themselves to fuel their expansion. How long do we have? Captain asked, his military training taking over. 2 years before the Scouts reach this sector. 5 years before the Harvesters follow, but you will not face them alone. There are other species who have survived previous encounters, hidden enclaves that have learned to fight back. I will teach you to contact them to coordinate resistance efforts. Doctor leaned forward. What do you need from us? Your people must grow strong quickly, not just in numbers but in spirit. You must become the leaders this galaxy needs, inspiring others, showing them that the darkness can be fought and beaten. And you, Maya, must become our voice among the stars. Maya felt the weight of destiny settling around her like armor. She thought of Tommy, crying alone in a dark hole until help arrived. She thought of her people dropping everything to save one small boy. That was humanity's true strength, the refusal to leave anyone behind. I'm ready, she said, and meant it. As the alien moons rose over their new world, humanity's real journey was just beginning. Had grown into her role as humanity's ambassador to the stars. The settlement on 442b now sprawled across several valleys, its population growing as more colony ships arrived from Earth. But beneath the surface of normal life, preparation for war continued in secret. Maya stood in the expanded xenobiology lab, watching holographic star maps rotate slowly in the air. Red markers indicated Devourer scout activity, and the pattern was unmistakable. They were closing in on human space faster than projected. The hegemony frigate Star's Edge will arrive tomorrow, Doctor announced as she entered the lab. Their ambassador is eager to meet humanity's representative. Maya nodded, though her stomach churned with nervousness. The hegemony was one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations, their technology centuries ahead of human capability. They had survived 3 separate Devourer incursions by retreating to heavily fortified worlds and waiting for the storms to pass. This would be her first real test as a galactic diplomat. Remember what taught you? Said, looking up from her research. Maya's grandmother had aged years in the past months, the stress of maintaining secret communications with dragon enclaves across the galaxy taking its toll. The respect directness and courage. They have no patience for false modesty. But they also think humans are primitives who barely understand fire, Maya muttered. Their last message basically asked if we had invented writing yet. Then show them they're wrong, Captain said from the doorway. He wore the new uniform of the Human Defense Corps, the military organization that officially didn't exist. The test results from our pilots are incredible, Maya. Whatever genetic modifications these dragons are helping us unlock, our people are adapting to their technologies faster than anyone thought possible. Maya knew he was right. Over the past months, had been working with select volunteers to awaken dormant capabilities in human DNA. The dragons called it genetic flowering, the activation of potential that had been seeded in humanity's distant ancestors. The results were remarkable. Human pilots could interface directly with dragon-designed spacecraft, their minds naturally adapting to faster-than-light navigation that had taken other species to master. But the cost was becoming clear too. Each person who underwent the process aged rapidly, they're shortened in exchange for abilities that would take generations to develop naturally. Maya herself had volunteered for the first treatments, and she could already see silver threads in her dark hair. The Harmony's song is ready for launch, Doctor continued. Your ship may not look like much, but the dragon modifications make it faster than anything in the known galaxy. Maya's ship was actually a converted mining vessel, its hull and patched, but its internal systems replaced with technology that shouldn't exist for another 1,000 years. Had insisted on the deception, let their enemies underestimate human capabilities until it was too late. "There's something else," said quietly. "Wants to see you before you leave. He says it's time for you to learn about the dragon hearts." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Dragon hearts were mentioned in the oldest stories had shared, artifacts of immense power that had once driven the greatest achievements of dragon civilization. But according to legend, using them came with a terrible price. That evening, Maya made her way through the now familiar passages to his chamber. The dragon was larger than when they first met, his scales having taken on a deeper gold hue that spoke of accumulated power. Around him floated 3 crystalline spheres, each the size of Maya's head, pulsing with internal light. "You grow stronger each day," observed as she approached. "The genetic awakening suits you well, but strength alone will not be enough for what comes next." Beyond them. "Maya, I have not been entirely truthful about the nature of this war. The Devourers are not simply another hostile species. They are what remains of the first galactic civilization, a people who chose to consume everything rather than accept extinction." Maya stared at the dragon in shock. "You mean they were once like us?" "Very much like you. They valued art, beauty, love. They explored the stars with wonder in their hearts. But when their sun began to die, when their world faced inevitable destruction, they made a choice that damned them for eternity. Rather than accept death with dignity, they began consuming other worlds to extend their lives. Each world they devoured made them stronger but also more monstrous, until only hunger remained of what they once were." "And the dragon hearts," gestured to the floating spheres. "These are the concentrated essence of stellar cores, harvested from dying stars and transformed into weapons of incredible power. A single dragon heart can destroy a planet or create one. They can bend space and time, resurrect the dead, or unmake entire star systems." Maya reached out hesitantly toward the nearest sphere. Energy sparked between her fingers and the crystal surface, and for a moment she felt the vast power contained within. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you will need them in the battles ahead. But using a dragon heart requires perfect balance between power and wisdom. Too little wisdom and the power consumes you. Too much caution and the power remains locked away when it's needed most." "Have you ever used one?" His great eyes grew distant. "Once, 3 million years ago when the first Devourer fleet reached I used a dragon heart to save our civilization, but the cost—" He paused, pain flickering across his alien features. "I was forced to sacrifice my mate and our clutch of unborn eggs to power the weapon. The Devourers were turned back, but I have carried that guilt ever since." Maya felt tears on her cheeks. "I'm sorry." "Do not pity me, young ambassador. I made the choice willingly, knowing the cost. That is what makes a dragon heart so dangerous. It always demands the thing you value most. But sometimes that sacrifice is the only way to save what matters." "You think I'll have to use one?" "I pray you will not, but if the time comes," lowered his head until his nose touched her forehead, "choose carefully what you're willing to lose." The next day, Maya stood on the landing platform watching the frigate descend through the morning sky. The ship was beautiful in its alienness, all flowing curves and organic lines that seemed to shift and change as it moved. When it landed, the grace of its movement reminded Maya of a giant bird settling onto a branch. The airlock hissed open, and Ambassador Kylix emerged in a cloud of exotic atmosphere. It was tall and ethereal, with translucent skin that showed the flow of luminous blood beneath. 6 arms ending in delicate, multi-jointed hands moved in constant, graceful gestures that Maya recognized as a form of communication. "Greetings, young star-touched," Kylix said, their voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I confess surprise at finding intelligence among the arrivals to galactic civilization." "The surprise is mutual," Maya replied diplomatically. "We've heard impressive things about resilience and wisdom." Kylix's head tilted in what might have been amusement. "Resilience, yes, we have survived by knowing when to fight and when to hide. Your species, however, seems inclined toward more dramatic solutions." "Meaning?" "We know of the Dragon Alliance. Such partnerships are not unknown in galactic history, but they rarely end well for the junior species. Dragons are powerful but also unpredictable. They view shorter-lived races as tools to be used and discarded. Maya felt a flash of anger but kept her voice level. Has shown us nothing but respect and wisdom. He's helping us prepare for threats that affect all of us. Preparation, yes, but consider, why has he waited until now to reveal himself? Your species has been sending radio signals into space for over a century. Why make contact only when the devourers draw near? The question struck home because Maya had wondered the same thing, but she thought she understood now. Because we weren't ready before, we needed to prove ourselves worthy of trust. Or perhaps because dragons need expendable soldiers for their war. Before Maya could respond, alarms began sounding across the settlement. Emergency signals flashed on every screen, and Captain's voice echoed from speakers. All personnel to emergency stations. We have unidentified ships approaching the system. Repeat, unidentified ships approaching. Maya and Kylix rushed to the command center, where tactical displays showed the approaching threat. 3 dark vessels, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it, were decelerating from faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. "Devourer scouts," Doctor announced grimly. "They're here early." Maya felt ice in her veins. According to all projections, the scouts weren't supposed to arrive for another year and a half. Either their intelligence was wrong, or humanity had been deliberately given false information. "Can we fight them?" Captain asked. 3 scout ships? Kylix made a gesture of dismissal. "Impossible. Each carries enough firepower to sterilize a continent. The only rational response is immediate evacuation." "No," Maya's voice cut through the rising panic in the room. "We don't run, not from our home." "Child, this is not bravery, it is suicide. My people learned long ago that discretion is the better part of survival." Maya turned to face the ambassador, and in that moment she understood something crucial about the galactic community. They had all learned to survive by hiding, by running, by accepting defeat as inevitable. No wonder they viewed humanity with suspicion. Humans didn't know how to give up. "Maybe that's the problem," she said quietly. "Maybe the reason the Devourers keep winning is because everyone thinks losing is inevitable." She activated her personal communicator. "We need you." "I am already on my way," came the dragon's mental voice. "Tell your people to prepare for something they have never seen." Minutes later, the mountain shook as something massive erupted from the caves where it had been hiding. The dragon rose into the sky, his scales blazing with golden fire, wings that seemed to span half the horizon carrying him toward the approaching enemy. But Maya realized this was still just a test. 3 scout ships against a single dragon, the outcome was obvious. This wasn't about winning or losing. This was about watching how humanity responded to impossible odds. "All defense personnel to battle stations," she ordered, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. "Launch all available fighters." "Maya, this is madness," Kylix protested. "Those ships will destroy any fighter that gets within weapons range." "Maybe, but we're going to try anyway." What followed was indeed madness, but it was a peculiarly human kind of madness. Knowing they couldn't win, couldn't even scratch the enemy's hull, 50 human pilots launched their improvised fighters anyway. They flew straight at ships that them 1,000 to 1, not because they expected victory, but because that's what humans did when their home was threatened. The Devourer scouts, perhaps confused by such irrational behavior, hesitated just long enough for to reach them. The dragon's attack was like watching a star explode in slow motion. Beams of pure energy lanced out from his scales, each one carrying the concentrated power of a solar flare. The first scout ship simply ceased to exist, its matter converted to expanding plasma. The second tried to run but was caught in the gravity well generated around himself. The dragon's body briefly became as massive as a small moon, crushing the alien vessel like an insect. The third scout managed to fire a single desperate shot at the planet's surface before its claws tore through its hull. The beam was aimed at the settlement, carrying enough energy to vaporize everything within 50 kilometers. Maya watched death descending toward her people and made a choice that would haunt her forever. She reached out with senses newly awakened by dragon genetic modification and touched one of the crystalline spheres had shown her. The dragon heart responded instantly, its power flowing through her like liquid fire. Time seemed to slow as Maya raised her hand toward the incoming weapon beam. The dragon heart's energy poured out of her, creating a shield of pure force that caught the Devourer weapon and turned it aside. The beam, deflected at the last second, carved a canyon through empty wilderness instead of destroying the settlement. But the cost was immediate and terrible. Maya felt her life force being drained into the artifact, years of her remaining converted into the energy needed to save her people. When the shield collapsed and time resumed its normal flow, she found herself on her knees, her hair now completely silver, her face lined with premature age. Maya rushed to her granddaughter's side, her medical scanner showing readings that made her gasp in horror. "What have you done?" "What I had to do," Maya whispered, her voice now carrying the weight of someone much older. Around them, the settlement erupted in cheers as people realized they had survived. The human pilots were returning from their impossible mission, having faced annihilation and lived to tell about it. But Maya saw the cost written on their faces too. The genetic modifications that allowed them to interface with dragon technology aged everyone who used them. Kylix approached slowly, their luminous blood poolsing in patterns Maya had learned to recognize as deep thought. "I have observed 17 different species face their first devourer encounter," the ambassador said quietly. "All of them responded with fear, with panic, with immediate plans for retreat. Your people are the first to charge toward certain destruction simply because it was the right thing to do." "Did we pass your test?" Maya asked, struggling to stand on legs that felt decades older than they should. "This was not my test, young warrior. This was theirs." Kylix gestured toward the void where the Devourer ships had been destroyed. "Scout vessels are equipped with quantum communicators that cannot be jammed or intercepted. Every moment of this battle has been transmitted back to the main Devourer fleet." Maya felt her blood turn to ice. "What does that mean?" "It means they know about your alliance with the dragons. They know humans will fight even when victory is impossible. And they know you have access to weapons that can actually hurt them." Kylix's hands moved in patterns of grim satisfaction. "You have just declared war on an enemy that has devoured 1,000 civilizations." "Good," Maya said, surprised by the fierce joy in her voice. "Let them come. They'll find out what happens when they threaten humanity's home." Landed near the settlement with a crash that shook the ground. The dragon was wounded, alien metal protruded from several scales, and his left wing trailed golden blood. But his eyes blazed with pride as he looked at Maya. "You used the dragon heart. I had to save them." "Yes, and in doing so, you have begun the process that will either save the galaxy or doom it completely." His mental voice reached not just Maya, but everyone present. "The test is complete. Humanity has proven itself worthy of the ultimate trust." "What ultimate trust?" Captain demanded. Instead of answering directly, gestured with his massive head toward the sky. High overhead, previously invisible ships began to, dozens of them, their hulls bearing the marks of 100 different species. "The Galactic Resistance," Maya breathed, understanding flooding through her. "Led by dragons, crewed by the survivors of 1,000 worlds, and now, commanded by humans. Your species has the one quality we have learned is essential for victory against the Devourers. You refuse to accept defeat even when it is rational to do so." Kylix made a sound like silver bells laughing. "Incredible. You planned this entire scenario from the beginning. The early arrival of the scouts, the positioning of the Resistance fleet, even my own presence here as witness." "The test had to be real," acknowledged. "Maya's people had to face actual death, make actual sacrifices, prove their courage was genuine and not merely theoretical." Maya looked around at her people, pilots aging beyond their years, engineers working frantically to repair battle damage, medics treating injuries from a fight they had no hope of winning but fought anyway. This was humanity at its finest and most foolish. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you take your place as the youngest admiral in galactic history," replied. "The Resistance fleets need a commander who understands that some things are worth dying for, someone who will inspire other species to remember what they once fought to protect." "I'm not ready for that kind of responsibility." "No one ever is, but readiness is not the same as worthiness." The dragon lowered his great head until his nose touched her forehead. "Your grandmother was right to use Dragon's Heart as her password. That is what you carry within you, the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect what you love." As Maya looked up at the vast fleet of Resistance ships, she realized her journey was just beginning. The girl who had snuck out to explore alien caves was gone, replaced by someone harder and older but also more determined. The Devourers wanted to consume everything beautiful in the universe. They were about to learn that humanity had other plans. Over the following weeks, Maya found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity as the Resistance fleet established a base in the 442 system. Ships arrived daily, carrying refugees from worlds already consumed by the Devourers, along with warriors from species she had never dreamed existed. The crystalline architects of Vega, beings made of living gemstone who communicated through harmonic vibrations. The shadow dancers of the void, energy creatures who existed partially outside normal spacetime. The iron druids of Tau, cyborgs who had merged so completely with their technology that the distinction between organic and artificial had lost all meaning. All of them looked to Maya for leadership, and all of them had the same question: how could someone so young command such respect from the ancient dragons? The answer came during a strategy session 3 weeks after the scout ship attack. Maya stood before a holographic display showing the Devourer advance pattern, pointing out weaknesses in their formation that older, more experienced commanders had missed. "They're too confident," she explained to the assembled fleet leaders. "Look at how they spread out their formations. They're not expecting coordinated resistance anymore. Every species they've encountered has fought alone, trying to protect their own worlds. But if we coordinate our attacks across multiple systems simultaneously—" "Impossible," interrupted Admiral Vex of the Hegemony Fleet. The commander had arrived with Kylix and brought 12 heavy cruisers to the Resistance cause. "The communications lag between star systems makes real-time coordination impossible." "Not if we use Dragon Heart amplifiers," Maya countered. "Has been working with our engineers to create a quantum communication network that ignores the speed of light entirely." The assembled commanders exchanged glances. Faster-than-light communication was considered impossible by the known laws of physics, but then again, so were most dragon technologies. "Even if such coordination were possible," Admiral Vex continued, "the logistics would be nightmarish. How do you synchronize attacks across dozens of systems when each has different defensive capabilities and strategic priorities?" Maya smiled, and several of the older commanders shifted uncomfortably. There was something unsettling about that smile, too knowing, too confident for someone who should barely understand the basics of interstellar warfare. "You're thinking like people who have spent centuries retreating," she said quietly. "You're focused on minimizing losses instead of maximizing damage. But the Devourers have a critical weakness: they can't comprehend genuine sacrifice for others." She manipulated the holographic display, showing how the Devourer fleet would likely respond to different attack patterns. When they encounter resistance, they always focus on eliminating the strongest defenders first. It's an efficient strategy against rational opponents. But what if we made them face opponents who aren't rational? "Explain," requested Admiral Kylix, their luminous blood pulsing with interest. "Humanity specializes in what the Devourers would consider tactical insanity. We'll volunteer for suicide missions, hold hopeless positions, charge impossible odds. Not because we expect to win, but because it's the right thing to do." Maya's eyes gleamed with a fierce light that reminded every creature present of dragons. "The Devourers will waste enormous resources trying to eliminate threats they think are strategically crucial, not realizing those threats exist purely to waste Devourer resources." "You're proposing to use your own people as expendable decoys," Admiral Vex said, horrified. "I'm proposing to use human nature as a weapon. We'll volunteer for those missions, Admiral. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy will take advantage of the opportunities we create." The silence that followed was profound. Finally, an ancient voice spoke from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. "The young Admiral understands warfare at a level that has been forgotten for." The speaker emerged into the light, a creature Maya had heard about but never seen. Commander Thane was one of the Eternal Guards, beings who had been fighting the Devourers since the very beginning of the war. His body was a patchwork of scars and artificial replacements, testament to battles across eons of conflict. "I have watched empires rise and fall, seen heroes become legends and legends become myths. But I have never encountered a species quite like humanity. You see death approaching, and your first instinct is to throw yourself between it and those you protect." "Is that so unusual?" Maya asked. "Extraordinarily so. Most intelligent species develop survival instincts that prioritize self-preservation over group welfare. It's an evolutionary necessity for reaching the stars. But somehow, your people have retained pack loyalty behaviors that should have been eliminated by natural selection long ago. Commander Thane moved closer, and Maya could see that his eyes were artificial, mechanical replacements that glowed with inner fire. The dragons have chosen well. Your species may be young and technically primitive, but you have something the rest of us have forgotten, the ability to find meaning in hopeless causes. So you'll support the coordination strategy. I will do more than that. I will place my entire fleet under your command. Thane raised his voice so every commander could hear. The Eternal Guard has not served under alien command in 3 million years, but these are unprecedented times, and they call for unprecedented measures. One by one, the other commanders added their agreement. Not because they fully understood Maya's strategies, but because they recognized something in her that they had thought was extinct, absolute, unshakable conviction that victory was possible. As the meeting dispersed and fleet commanders returned to their ships to begin preparations, Maya found herself alone within the chamber beneath the settlement. "You're not telling them everything," the dragon observed. Maya sighed, feeling every one of her artificially aged years. "Because they wouldn't understand. The strategy I outlined will work, but the cost." She trailed off, unable to voice what she had realized. "Tell me." To coordinate attacks across multiple star systems simultaneously, we'll need to use dragon hearts as communication amplifiers. That means linking the quantum essences of every fleet commander across the network. But dragon hearts don't just connect technologies, they connect consciousness. His great eyes widened as he understood the implications. "You're proposing to link the minds of every resistance fighter in the galaxy into a single tactical consciousness. It's the only way to achieve the coordination we need. But the psychic strain of maintaining such a connection." Maya shook her head. "Most commanders will survive a few hours at most. The human commanders might last longer because we're naturally more resistant to mental stress, but even we have limits. You're asking every leader in the resistance to sacrifice their sanity for a chance at victory. I'm asking them to do what needs to be done, and I'm not asking them to do anything I won't do myself." Was quiet for a long moment, his ancient mind processing the full scope of what Maya was proposing. "There is another cost you haven't mentioned," he said finally. "What do you mean?" "The person who serves as the central node for such a network, the one who coordinates and directs all the linked consciousness, will absorb the psychic death of everyone connected to them. Even if the strategy succeeds, even if we defeat the Devourer fleet, you will not survive the experience intact." Maya had known this, had calculated the price and accepted it the moment she conceived the plan. Someone has to pay the cost, better me than anyone else. "Why?" "Because I'm the one asking them to make this sacrifice, because I'm the one who brought them together, and because," she paused, struggling to put her feelings into words, "because I love them all too much to let them face extinction without giving them every possible chance." Lowered his massive head until his forehead touched hers, a gesture of profound respect among his kind. "You have truly become worthy of the dragon heart's power, but there may be another way, a path that doesn't require your destruction." "Tell me." The ancient legends speak of a technique called the Phoenix Protocol. Instead of absorbing the psychic death of the network, you could transform it into something else. Convert the accumulated life force into a weapon capable of striking directly at the Devourer fleet's consciousness. Maya felt a spark of hope, quickly tempered by caution. What would be the cost? Everyone connected to the network would experience temporary death. Their consciousness would be absorbed into the Phoenix weapon and then reconstituted afterward. But there's no guarantee the reconstitution would be perfect. Some might return with gaps in their memories, changes in personality, or worse. And if it fails? If it fails, every mind connected to the network dies permanently, and the Phoenix weapon consumes itself in the attempt. Maya considered the options: certain death for herself but probable survival for her commanders, or a gamble that could save everyone or destroy them all. "How long do we have to decide?" "The main Devourer fleet will reach this system in 6 days. If we're going to coordinate a galaxy-wide resistance, we need to establish the network within the next 3 days to allow time for preparation." Maya nodded, her decision already made but not yet spoken. Gather the fleet commanders tomorrow. It's time they understood the full scope of what we're planning. As she left the dragon's chamber and returned to the bustling activity of the settlement, Maya found her grandmother waiting for her. "You have that look," said quietly. "The same look you had when you decided to sneak out and explore alien caves. This is a little more serious than teenage rebellion, Grandma. Is it? Or are you still the same girl who can't resist charging toward danger if it means protecting the people you love?" Maya smiled despite herself. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe not. Just remember, the bravest thing isn't always charging forward. Sometimes it's finding a way to bring everyone home alive. That night, Maya stood on the observation deck of her ship, watching the lights of the Resistance fleet scattered across the system like artificial constellations. Tomorrow, she would ask every commander to gamble their sanity and survival on a strategy that existed only in her imagination. In 6 days, they would face an enemy that had devoured civilizations for. But tonight, for just a few hours, she allowed herself to feel young again, to remember the girl who had looked up at alien stars and dreamed of adventure among the cosmos. The adventure had found her, all right, and now it was up to her to make sure it had a happy ending. In the depths of space, ancient enemies prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. And at the center of it all, a human girl who had aged beyond her years carried the hopes of 1 trillion souls toward an uncertain tomorrow. The War Council chamber aboard the Resistance flagship Eternal Defiance hummed with nervous energy as fleet commanders from across the galaxy gathered for what might be their final strategic meeting. Maya stood at the center of the room, looking far older than her 16 years, silver hair catching the light of the holographic star maps that surrounded them. "The Devourer main fleet will arrive in this system in 72 hours, she announced, her voice carrying the authority that had somehow made beings centuries older than her willing to follow her orders. "Their force consists of 47 capital ships, each capable of sterilizing a planet, supported by over 300 smaller vessels." Admiral Vex of the Hegemony gestured with 4 of his 6 arms, a sign of deep concern. "Our combined fleet numbers only 18 capital ships and perhaps 150 support vessels. Even with Dragon assistance, the mathematics of this engagement are unfavorable." "The mathematics don't matter," Maya replied calmly. "Mathematics assume both sides are playing by the same rules. We're not going to." She manipulated the holographic display, showing the positions of resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked worlds already consumed by the Devourers, blue dots showed resistance strongholds, and yellow markers indicated neutral worlds that might yet join the fight. For 3 million years, the galactic community has fought the Devourers using conventional tactics. Protect your people, retreat when overwhelmed. It's a rational strategy that has allowed many species to survive by hiding in the deepest corners of space. "And it has worked," pointed out Commander Thane of the Eternal Guard. "My people have survived 47 separate Devourer incursions using exactly those tactics." "Survived, yes, but never won. The Devourers grow stronger with each world they consume while the resistance grows weaker. Eventually, there will be no more corners to hide in." Maya's eyes blazed with determination. "It's time to change the equation." She gestured, and the display shifted to show a complex web of communication lines connecting resistance fleets across dozens of star systems. "In 18 hours, we're going to link every resistance cell in the galaxy into a single tactical network. Not just their ships and weapons, but their minds. Every commander, every pilot, every gunner will share consciousness through Dragon heart amplifiers." The silence that followed was profound and uncomfortable. Several commanders exchanged glances that spoke of deep concern. Finally, Dr. Sarah spoke up. "Maya, the psychic strain of maintaining such a network. Our medical projections suggest that most participants won't survive more than a few hours of mental linkage." "I know," Maya said quietly. "I'm not asking anyone to do this blindly. The cost will be terrible, but the alternative is the extinction of everything we care about." Admiral Kylix leaned forward, their luminous blood pulsing in patterns Maya had learned to recognize as intense calculation. Even assuming the network functions as planned, what tactical advantage could justify such a sacrifice? Maya smiled, and several of the older commanders felt a chill. That smile reminded them of dragons preparing to unleash their full power. Perfect coordination across interstellar distances means we can implement strategies the Devourers have never encountered. Simultaneous attacks on their supply lines, their forward bases, their command structure. They'll be fighting 1,000 different battles at once, each one perfectly coordinated with all the others. She manipulated the display again, showing attack patterns that wove through space like a complex dance. But more importantly, it means we can do something no species has ever attempted against the Devourers. We can attack their home fleet directly while they're engaged with our main force. The network will allow us to coordinate feint attacks that draw their attention while our real strike force approaches from an unexpected vector. Commander Thane's artificial eyes glowed brighter as he processed the implications. You're proposing to assault their mothership while they're distracted by defending against multiple phantom threats. The Devourer command structure is extremely centralized. Destroy their mothership and the entire fleet becomes essentially leaderless. Individual vessels are still dangerous, but without coordination, they can be defeated in detail. And who, asked Admiral Vex slowly, will serve as the central node for this consciousness network? The coordinator would need to process the thoughts and decisions of thousands of minds simultaneously. Maya met his gaze steadily. I will. The protest from the assembled commanders was immediate and overwhelming. Absolutely not, Doctor declared. You're barely 16 years old. The psychic stress would kill you within minutes, added Admiral Kylix. There must be another way, Commander Thane insisted. Maya raised her hand for silence, and surprisingly, the experienced military leaders obeyed. There is another way, she said. Has told me about something called the Phoenix Protocol. Instead of absorbing the psychic deaths of the network participants, I could transform that accumulated life force into a weapon capable of striking directly at the Devourer fleet consciousness. What would be the cost? Doctor asked, though her expression suggested she already knew she wouldn't like the answer. Everyone connected to the network would experience temporary death, their consciousness absorbed into the weapon and then reconstituted afterward. If it works, everyone survives with their minds intact. If it fails, we all die, Admiral Vex finished grimly. Yes, but we die fighting for something greater than ourselves, and there's a chance, a real chance, that we could end this war permanently. The chamber fell silent as each commander contemplated the choice before them. Certain death by gradual retreat, or probable death in a gamble that might save the galaxy. I need to discuss this with my people, Admiral Vex said finally. As do I, added Commander Thane. You have 12 hours, Maya told them. The network must be established tomorrow if we're going to be ready for the Devourer arrival. As the commanders filed out to consult with their crews, Maya found herself alone except for, who had been observing silently from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. You didn't tell them everything, the dragon said. No, I didn't. Maya collapsed into a chair, suddenly feeling the full weight of the artificial aging the dragon heart had inflicted on her. I didn't tell them that even if the Phoenix Protocol works perfectly, the person who serves as the central node won't be the same afterward. The accumulated memories and experiences of thousands of minds would fundamentally alter anyone's consciousness, agreed. You would retain your core self, but you would also carry fragments of everyone else who died and was reborn through the network. I would become something new, something that's part human and part everything else. Maya stared out at the stars visible through the chamber's viewports. Sometimes I wonder if this is how every hero's journey ends, not with victory, but with transformation into something the original person wouldn't recognize. Would you choose differently if you could? Maya thought about Tommy, the 7-year-old boy who had fallen down a hole and been saved by an entire community dropping everything to help him. She thought about her parents, still working in the settlement's engineering corps, building humanity's new home with their own hands. She thought about her grandmother, growing old while carrying the burden of cosmic secrets. No, she said firmly. If this is the price of protecting the people I love, then it's a price I'm willing to pay. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of preparation and increasingly frantic activity. Maya spent most of that time in the deepest chambers of Cave Complex, where the dragon hearts were being prepared for the greatest working of power in galactic history. The three crystalline spheres now floated in a complex arrangement of supporting technology, both human and dragon. Quantum field generators maintained stable links to similar installations on resistance ships throughout the galaxy. The air hummed with barely contained energy that made Maya's teeth ache and her artificial aging accelerate noticeably. "The commanders have made their decision," Doctor reported as she entered the chamber. "Every single fleet has volunteered to join the network, even Admiral Vex, despite his reservations." Maya felt a surge of emotion that was part pride, part terror, and part overwhelming love for the beings who were willing to trust her with their lives and sanity. "Have they been briefed on the specific procedures?" "As much as possible. The crystalline architects of Vega will serve as communication relays. Their harmonic consciousness is naturally suited for maintaining psychic links. The shadow dancers will provide temporal anchoring to prevent the network from drifting out of sync with normal spacetime. The iron druids will handle the technological interfaces. And the humans? We'll do what we always do, hold the line and refuse to give up." Maya nodded, then turned to, "Are you ready?" The dragon's great head inclined in what might have been a bow. "I have been ready for 3 million years, young Admiral. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what comes next." The process of establishing the consciousness network was unlike anything any of the participants had ever experienced. As Maya placed her hands on the primary dragon heart, she felt her awareness expand beyond her physical form, touching the minds of resistance fighters across dozens of star systems. First came the familiar presences of her human compatriots, the pilots of the Harmony Defense Corps, their minds sharp with determination and the slightly manic edge that came from regular interface with dragon technology. Then the broader consciousness of the fleet, thousands of beings whose thoughts moved in harmonious patterns like a vast orchestra tuning itself. The Eternal Guard felt like ancient stones worn smooth by endless time, their memories stretching back to the beginning of the war. The crystalline architects sang in frequencies that existed beyond sound, their consciousness more melody than thought. The shadow dancers flickered in and out of mental focus like half-remembered dreams. And underlying it all, the vast, ancient presence of the dragons themselves, and his kin scattered across the galaxy, their minds touching hers with power that made the dragon hearts feel like toys by comparison. "Network established," Maya announced, her voice now carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond the physical. All nodes responding, temporal synchronization locked. Through the shared consciousness, she felt the approach of the Devourer fleet like a wave of cold darkness spreading across the stars. 47 capital ships and their escorts, each one a wound in space itself, carrying the accumulated hunger of countless consumed worlds. "Devourer fleet dropping out of hyperspace," reported Admiral Vex, his mental voice reaching every consciousness in the network simultaneously. "Range, 12 light minutes and closing." "All units implement Plan Phoenix," Maya commanded. "Faint attacks commence in 30 seconds. What followed was the most complex military operation in galactic history. Across 17 different star systems, resistance fleets began simultaneous attacks on Devourer positions. Not real assaults intended to achieve victory, but carefully coordinated demonstrations designed to draw the enemy's attention and force them to split their focus. The beauty of the consciousness network was that every participant could see the entire battle unfolding across interstellar space. When a resistance cell in the Vega system needed support, pilots from Tau could adjust their attack patterns to create the necessary distraction. When Devourer forces began concentrating against the fleet, human fighters from 6 different systems coordinated their movements to appear as a major threat, requiring immediate response. The Devourers, accustomed to fighting enemies who communicated through traditional technology subject to the speed of light delay, found themselves facing an opponent who could adapt to changing tactical situations in real time across impossible distances. "They're taking the bait," Commander Thane reported. "Devourer forces are spreading out to respond to multiple perceived threats." "Phase 2 commences now," Meyer announced. This was the most dangerous part of the plan. While the main Devourer fleet was distracted by the faint attacks, a strike force of the most advanced resistance ships would approach the enemy mothership from an unexpected vector, using the shadow of a nearby moon to mask their approach. Maya felt the thoughts of the strike force pilots as they began their approach. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez of the Human Defense Corps, her mind sharp with the focused calm that came from knowing this was probably a one-way mission. Captain of the hegemony fleet, his consciousness flowing with the mathematical precision typical of tactical thinking. Wing commander of the Eternal Guard, ancient beyond measure, but still burning with the fire that had kept him fighting across eons. Strike force in position, came the coordinated report. Mothership target acquired. Through the network, Maya could see what they saw, a vessel so massive at comprehension. Its hull formed from the consumed matter of 100 worlds. Dark energy writhed around it like living shadows, and its presence in spacetime was so dense that nearby stars flickered and dimmed. All units prepare for Phoenix Protocol activation, Maya announced. This was the moment of ultimate choice. She could feel the fear and determination of thousands of minds linked to hers, all of them trusting her with their lives and sanity. The weight of that trust was almost unbearable. Dragon hearts charging to maximum output, reported. Phoenix weapon configuration stable. Maya closed her eyes and reached deeper into the network than she had ever gone before. Instead of simply coordinating the linked minds, she began to absorb them, drawing the life force and consciousness of every participant into herself as fuel for the Phoenix weapon. The sensation was indescribable. She became Lieutenant Martinez's fierce protective love for her younger brother. She became Captain's mathematical elegance and Admiral Kylix's ancient wisdom. She became Commander Thane's endless determination and the crystalline architect's harmonic beauty. Every mind that joined the weapon made her more than human, more than any single consciousness could ever be. But with each absorption, she felt herself dying and being reborn as something new. The Maya who had snuck out of the settlement to explore alien caves was being consumed and transformed into something that was simultaneously individual and collective, mortal and eternal. Phoenix weapon at 90% charge, she announced, her voice now containing the harmonics of 1,000 different species. Strike force, begin your attack run. The Resistance ships dove toward the Devourer mothership like arrows shot by a god. Their weapons, enhanced by Dragon technology and guided by the Phoenix network, struck with precision that should have been impossible. But the mothership's defenses were ancient and powerful weapons that had been perfected across millions of years of conquest. One by one, Maya felt the strike force pilots die. Their deaths echoed through the network as flashes of pain and regret, but also satisfaction at having struck back against the darkness that had consumed so many worlds. Strike force eliminated, Commander Thane reported grimly. Minimal damage to target. Phoenix weapon at full charge, Maya announced. Firing now. She released the accumulated life force of the entire Resistance network as a single focused beam of pure conscious energy. It was every hope, dream, love, and sacrifice of 1 trillion souls concentrated into a weapon that existed not in physical space, but in the realm of consciousness itself. The beam struck the Devourer mothership and passed through its physical hull as if it didn't exist, striking directly at the vast collective intelligence that controlled the vessel. For 3 million years, the Devourers had consumed other species to feed their endless hunger. Now, for the first time, they encountered something that could consume them. The Phoenix weapon tore through the mothership's consciousness like fire through dry grass. The accumulated hunger and hatred of eons was burned away, leaving only the faint echo of what the Devourers had been before they chose the path of endless consumption. Maya felt the mothership's intelligence die and be reborn as something new. Not the mindless hunger that had driven the Devourers across the galaxy, but the creative curiosity they had possessed when they were still capable of love and wonder. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Without the mothership's coordinating intelligence, individual vessels lost all sense of purpose and direction. Some simply shut down entirely. Others began attacking each other in confusion. A few seemed to remember what they had been fighting for originally and turned to flee toward unknown destinations. Network reconstitution beginning, announced. This was the most dangerous part of the Phoenix Protocol. Maya had to release all the consciousness she had absorbed, sending each mind back to its original body while trying to maintain her own identity in the process. She felt Commander Thane's ancient determination flowing out of her and back to his body aboard the Eternal Vigilance. Admiral Vex's mathematical precision returned to the Hegemony flagship. Lieutenant Martinez's fierce protectiveness settled back into its human form aboard the Harmony's song. One by one, thousands of minds departed from the collective consciousness that Maya had become, each taking part of her with them but leaving echoes of themselves behind. When the process was complete, Maya found herself alone in her own mind for the first time in hours. But she was not the same person who had begun this battle. She carried fragments of every consciousness that had joined the Phoenix weapon, memories that weren't hers, skills she had never learned, perspectives from 100 different species. She was still Maya, but she was also more than that. She was the living embodiment of the galactic resistance, carrying within herself the hopes and dreams of every species that had ever stood against the darkness. "Status report," she requested, her voice weaker now, but still carrying the authority that had somehow made her the leader of a galactic alliance. "All major Devourer vessels destroyed or disabled," reported Admiral Vex, his mental voice carrying notes of wonder. "Remaining forces are in full retreat. The mothership intelligence appears to have been transformed into something we don't recognize. Casualties. Surprisingly light. The strike force that attacked the mothership directly was lost, but most of the faint attack fleets survived with minimal losses. The consciousness network reconstitution was successful for 97% of participants." Maya felt a wave of relief so intense it made her dizzy. They had gambled everything on an insane strategy, and somehow it had worked. "Maya," Kame's concerned mental voice, "you need medical attention immediately. The strain of serving as the Phoenix weapon's focus has accelerated your aging beyond safe parameters." She looked at her hands and saw that they were now those of an elderly woman, lined and spotted with age. Her hair had gone completely white, and she could feel the artificial years settling into her bones like lead weights. "How long do I have?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Weeks, perhaps months if you rest completely. The dragon heart energy has burned through your life force at an unsustainable rate." Maya nodded, accepting the cost with the same calm determination she had shown throughout the battle. "Then we'd better make them count." Over the following days, as reports arrived from across the galaxy confirming the complete collapse of the Devourer threat, Maya worked with renewed urgency to establish the framework for lasting peace. The Phoenix weapon had not just defeated humanity's enemies, it had transformed them back into something resembling their original nature. The former Devourers, their hunger replaced by their ancient curiosity, approached the Resistance fleet under flags of truce. They wanted to understand what had happened to them, how they had been restored to something approaching their original consciousness. "They remember what they were before the hunger consumed them," Maya explained to the assembled fleet commanders during what she suspected might be her final war council. 3 million years ago, they were explorers and artists, scientists and philosophers. The Phoenix weapon burned away the accumulated corruption and left only the original spark that had made them a spacefaring civilization. "Can they be trusted?" Admiral Vex asked pragmatically. "Can anyone?" Maya replied. "But they're offering to help repair the worlds they consumed, to share their accumulated knowledge with the species they once threatened. That's more than we could have hoped for." Commander Thane, his ancient face showing something that might have been wonder, leaned forward. "In all my eons of fighting, I never imagined victory could look like this. Not just defeat of our enemies, but their redemption." "It's what humans do," Doctor said quietly. "We refuse to accept that anyone is beyond saving." Maya smiled, feeling the weight of accumulated memories from 1,000 different species. Maybe that's the real lesson here. The galaxy doesn't need conquerors or even defenders. It needs people who believe in second chances. As the War Council dispersed, and commanders returned to their ships to begin the long work of rebuilding a shattered galaxy, Maya found herself alone within the familiar crystal cave where their partnership had begun. "Any regrets?" the dragon asked. Maya considered the question seriously. She was dying, her life force consumed by powers beyond mortal comprehension. She carried memories that weren't her own and responsibilities that would have crushed the 16-year-old girl who had snuck out to explore alien caves. She would never see the settlement her people were building become a true city, never have children of her own, never grow old in the normal way. But she also carried within herself the love and determination of every being who had fought for freedom against impossible odds. She had seen a galaxy united in common cause, had witnessed the transformation of ancient enemies into allies. She had helped forge the foundation of a peace that might last for. No, she said finally, no regrets. The other dragons have agreed to share our longevity techniques with humanity, said quietly. It won't restore the years you've lost, but it will slow the aging process enough to give you more time. How much more time? Perhaps a few decades if you're careful. Long enough to help establish the new Galactic Council, to see your people take their place among the stars. Maya felt a spark of hope she hadn't dared nurture. A few decades wasn't the full lifetime she might have had, but it was enough to see the consequences of what they had accomplished. There's something else, continued. The former Devourers have offered to share a technology they developed during their millions of years of conquest. Consciousness transfer matrices that could preserve your accumulated knowledge and memories indefinitely. You mean immortality? Of a sort, your consciousness would survive in crystalline storage, able to communicate and advise future generations, but unable to experience physical sensation or emotion in the normal way. Maya shook her head immediately. No, the girl who started this journey believed that life was precious precisely because it was limited. I won't abandon that principle now. Even if it means losing all the wisdom you've gained, all the memories of the beings who fought beside you. Especially then, memory isn't meant to be hoarded forever. It's meant to be shared with the next generation, transformed into stories and lessons that help them build something better than what came before. His great head tilted, and what she had learned was his expression of deep approval. Truly, your species was the right choice to lead the galaxy into its new age. 6 months later, Maya stood on the observation deck of the Harmony's song, watching as the first interspecies colony was established on a world that had been liberated from devourer consumption. Humans worked alongside, former devourers, crystalline architects, and dozens of other species to build something that had never existed before, a truly galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. Her hair was completely white now, her face lined with premature age, but her eyes still blazed with the fire that had made dragons trust her with the fate of the galaxy. She carried within herself the memories of every being who had joined the Phoenix weapon, their hopes and dreams living on in her consciousness. Admiral, came a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Tommy, now 8 years old and serving as an unofficial ambassador between the human settlement and the various alien species that had come to call 442B home. Hello, Tommy. How are the negotiations with the crystalline architects going? They want to teach us their harmonic language. They say humans have really good voices for singing in multiple dimensions. Tommy paused, studying her with the serious expression children sometimes wore when they sensed something adults tried to hide. Are you okay? You look really tired. Maya smiled, remembering the scared little boy who had fallen down a hole and been saved by an entire community. Now he was helping to negotiate treaties between species separated by millions of years of evolution. I'm fine, Tommy, just thinking about how much things have changed.